Well, Al Leiter, welcome to the Coach's Corner.
Good to be here.
19 seasons.
Watch it all the time, John.
Oh, thanks, Al. You'll watch it more now, that's for sure. 19 seasons, Al, in the big leagues. You know, that's so impressive. Very few people really play any professional sport that long, and yet alone a pitcher. But, you know, there's a path to the big leagues. Why don't you go back and tell us the genesis of Al Leiter?
Well, I was born in Toms River at Community Memorial Hospital. No, I won't go that far. You know what? You're right. And I think so much had taken place over the years, obviously, to get to become a big leaguer. And, you know, often we're asked, as not only myself, but other people who make it to the pinnacle of their sport, as to, you know, when did you think you'd make it? You know, did you think you'd be a big leaguer? Heck no. I started as a Pee-wee baseball player, grew up down the Jersey Shore in Berkeley Township, played Pee-wee, Little League, Babe Ruth, right on up, and I loved the game. Played all the sports. You know, obviously it's a different time. I'm 30-some-odd years. I'm 45 years old. And it was out of a passion to really just enjoy a sport that I loved, that I grew up in a large family. They all liked baseball. They gave me a glove. I got the ball. I started playing catch. And that's the start of, you know, a guy who had a good arm. But as far as the instruction and how specific things have gotten, you know, now today with our own kids and watching what's going on, it's a better game. It's a better sport because of that. But I just hope that the fun and the passion isn't lost based on, you know, these kids thinking that they're all going to be the next A-Rod or, you know, Johan Santana.
Which brings me to a point. You know, you see so much specialization today with
Did
young
I answer your
kids.
question?
Yeah, you did. You did. But, you know, we're going to segue into something else, though, here, Al. You know, you talk about youth sports and youth activities, and you see so much specialization today. What is your recommendation for young kids? Should they be playing the one sport at a certain age?
No. No, look. There's a certain hand-eye athleticism that's part of every sport, and if you could have your player, your child, play various sports up to, I don't know what that age is, really, John. I mean, I'm just experiencing it now. I have a daughter who plays volleyball, who's in high school, and my other daughter plays sports that, you know, kind of our mantra within our house. You know, get out there, preferably a team sport, learn how to, you know, be with other teammates, pulling for one another, sharing the responsibility. My son, you know, he's in fifth grade, so he's now. But I love the fact he plays football, he plays baseball, he plays basketball. I don't know how much longer, you know, as you get closer to high school and the specialization of it. I just don't want the fun to be taken out of it, because the reality is, you had mentioned about the 19 seasons and a little over 17 plus years service time. I went through a lot. I went through a lot in getting to the big leagues quickly. I went through a lot in 2 shoulder operations. I revamped my mechanics completely, blew it up. Went back to my old coach, who was in Oneonta, my first rookie ball coach, while I was living in Florida. I said, Gil, show me. Because what I'm doing right now, and we could go to a Strasburg or other guys that you know are heralded and end up getting hurt prematurely, and I broke my mechanics down. And I was able to get back. And during that period of time, I got my college degree online, and, you know, so much took place. So when you look at kids and maybe even parents, and they think their guy's going to be the next star, it's ridiculous. After I retired, I went up to the Hall of Fame and showed the kids around and showed them, you know, I got a no-hit timeline, and, you know, just kind of, hey, dear old dad, this was the end of my career. And talking about how tough it is to make it, and the percentage of those who end up getting drafted and then get into that little box of the minor leagues, and then even less as you get to A-ball, AA, AAA, it is so small. It's 1.5% of all of those kids playing Little League, Babe Ruth, Cal Ripken, you name it, travel teams that make it. Well, so the reality is that go out and play, have fun. Yes, try to be the best you can, but in the end, you know, there's a good chance your kid's not going to make it. So how many, you watch that Little League baseball, and I'm not trying to discourage it at all, because I think the whole aspect is awesome. But how many Little League World Series baseball pitchers made it to the big leagues?
I couldn't name.
I know. Is there one?
Offhand?
You know, I hate to throw out a question we can't answer, but so along the line of allow them. As a father of my kids, play all the sports and have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Learn how to compete.
Yes.
How important is learning how to compete to bring you to the next level?
I wasn't the greatest pitcher. I had some great moments. Thank you for the introduction. I was lucky to have been afforded to be in organizations that tried. There's a lot of teams that go to spring training. You kind of look around the clubhouse and say, oof, okay, we got to be on to push and hopefully the owner's going to go out and maybe get that key hitter or pitcher come trade deadline. I was lucky. I started with the New York Yankees. As I said, I was drafted. I signed a letter of intent to go to the University of Florida. Mr. Steinbrenner gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. I figured, hey, I'll do this for 3 years or so, probably get released. I'll finish up my college at Rutgers, and I'll be an engineer. I thought I was going to be an engineer. The path was great. I did more than I ever dreamt. But the competitive part of me, and I don't know whether it's innate or I'm just a little nuts, but
combination, maybe a little both.
But I think my ability to, I always say, the aggressive aspect, or somebody who's mentally tough. Mentally tough isn't throwing stuff or breaking the water cooler or going in and acting like a nut job. Mentally tough is for my ability, John, as the catcher, to just hone in on the glove, know the strength and weakness of the hitter for my job. This was my job, and I was able to, at times, be able to be in that little zone. You ever see it For the Love of the Game?
Yes.
Awesome. And I get it. When he said mechanism, Kevin Costner, and everything went quiet. And that's what happens. When you're in that zone that you can't explain, and I think at every level, even, for whatever level, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, where you're in that moment where you just know, boom, 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 and you did it. What'd you think? What were you thinking? Nothing. I just did it. And I think I was able to, 163rd game in 1999, we fly into Cincinnati. We either beat the Reds and we move on to Arizona and play Randy Johnson and the D-backs, or we fly back to Chase, New York and the season. To be able to realize, okay, every pitch, boom, boom, repeat your delivery. Be mentally and physically prepared. I tell people this. I tell big leaguers this. I said, what's your job? I say all the time. They think I'm nuts, which I probably am a little bit. And I said, what's your job? To win the game. How are you going to do that? Go deep in the game and don't give up too many runs. Well, how are you going to do that? Throw strikes. Throw strikes. What do you mean? Well, have a good delivery and hit my spot. How are you going to hit your spot? Ultimately, you break it down to that moment, which is the execution of a quality pitch. And to be mentally prepared, go into the game. Who is the scout report? Who am I facing? How am I going to get them out? How am I going to exploit the weakness? Be physically fit. Run. Stadiums, exercise, shoulder exercise, work with your strength and conditioning coach as they have at the major league level, strong abs, strong legs, and don't allow the exterior distractions to come into the task at hand. That's your job. Because baseball, as you know, John, when that ball comes out of my hand and I make that pitch and you're going to go down and away, and I throw that perfect 92-mile-an-hour sinker and it runs a little bit down and away, and the guy off the end of the bat, doop, little base hit to right field, there's a runner at second base, 2 outs, and he scores. I don't know, did I fail? I don't know. Was he lucky? No, it's part of the game. Or swing and bunt. How about in the perfect game, or the no-hitter with Roy Halladay? The last play of the game is a swing and bunt. Ruiz makes a great play, falls out. There's a bat in the way, and he gets him out for a no-hitter. How easy that could have ricocheted.
Well, I want to ask you about a no-hitter, because you threw one. And what do we have? Now, of course, we've seen a lot of no-hitters the last year or two, but we're still only 20-something players have thrown no-hitters with all the years that we have played.
John, I'm still mad at Dwight Gooden.
Because?
Because I throw a no-hitter for the Marlins. And it was really the first year after the injuries that I had. I got to the big leagues in 87, was traded in 89 for Jesse Barfield of Toronto. Toronto, I thought it was a hockey town. I didn't even know they were playing baseball. It ended up being the best thing for me. Won a couple World Series up there. I got hurt right away, had surgery in 89, came back marginally in 90, had surgery in 91. I thought my career was done. So fast forward, 93, got an opportunity in the World Series. When I eventually get to the Marlins, I'm now become an established guy. Made the All-Star team, and I threw the no-hitter. So it kind of put me on another level of thinking. But I say about Doc Gooden, I throw this no-hitter against Colorado. Game. No, within 4 days, there was 3 no-hitters that year. Dwight Gooden throws the second. That was the first no-hitter of the year. Dwight Gooden throws the second no-hitter 4 days later. Who do you think got the cover of SI or whatever? Not me.
All right, now, in the process of that no-hitter, though, are you aware that no-hitter is taking place? Are you just concentrating at the task at hand? Or is it a combination of both?
Combination of both. And I'll tell you this, Larry Rothschild, who I love, who is now the Yankee pitching coach, fantastic pitching coach, gets it, gets the mind, gets the mental, the mechanics of it. So he's my pitching coach. First 2 innings, and I was throwing hard. When I came back from my surgery, I'd hit 96, whatever. I had good stuff, a big curveball. Wild, command-wise, I wasn't hitting spot. So the first 2 innings, I walked 2 guys, and I remember hitting Ellis Burke in the first 2 innings. And I, the pitching coach could watch and said, boy, he's got great stuff, but, he's all over. So he pulls me down the tunnel. Renee Latchman is the manager at the time, and he says, what the heck are you doing? A few words that we can't use on this. So he kind of jumped me and settled down, and then, of course, as you get deeper into the game, and what made it easy but also difficult, that the game was out of hand. We won 11-0. And I think it would have almost been better as far as mentally to stay in it if it was a 2-0 game. Because then not only is it a base hit or a double and a home run, it's not just 2 runs, it's a loss. So with the big lead, everybody now is just watching, say, okay, he's got the no-hitter. And it became the swell of, is he going to get this no-hitter? But there's no doubt about it, and I say it often on the air with, MLB Network or, whether it's a Yankee game with Michael Kay or whomever, it's this after the 7th inning. Because if you see most no-hitters, if it's a perfect game in the 7th inning, you're going to have batters 1, 2, 3 in the lineup. So tough guys, right? If you have a walk or 2, you're going to deal with 2, 3, 4. If there's 2 walks, you're going to deal with 3, 4, 5. So usually that 7th inning is my big inning to say, wow, this is legitimate. But leading up to that, you hear people, he's got a no-hitter in the 5th. So it happens a lot. So after the 7th inning, yeah, I felt it.
You felt it. You
Yeah.
felt it, and you just kept your focus, and you just continued with the task at hand and the feeling afterwards.
Fellow Jerseyite was the last batter of the game, Eric Young.
Yeah, Rutgers.
And, that's right, Rutgers. And I just stayed fastball away. And normally I throw a lot of cutters. I cut fastball in, very occasional curveball if it's a guy's way out in front of my fastball, and just riding the fastball away, which was an unusual pitch because that wasn't my command side. Right-handed batter to the outside part of the plate. And he kept fouling him off, and it ended up being usual ton of pitches. I think it was about 7 or 8 pitches. Strike 3 through the zone. Charlie Johnson, great young catcher, he comes out. We look at each other. I didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. We kind of hugged. People after said, you look like you weren't even happy about it. You threw a no-hitter, and you guys were just, it was a great moment. It was a great moment, as you can imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, the dreaming in the backyard, playing wiffle ball. You throw a no-hitter.
Well, did you fantasize about ever pitching in the 7th game of a World Series?
That was another one, aside from the no-hitter, absolutely. Yes, you pick your most exciting or most compelling moments in the sport. And, anytime there's a one-game scenario, winner's happy, the losers are crying, you go home a winner or, wait till next year. So to have pitched in that Game 7 in '97 against the Indians, and really leading up to it, John, I didn't have nearly as good a year. We basically added a lot of players. Jim Leland came over from the Pirates as the manager. I ended up hurting my knee in an early game in May in Candlestick. I slipped on the wet grass. Bobby Bonilla was playing third. I came over. There's a lot of foul territory in Candlestick. And I checked up, and I had a microfracture in my knee. Didn't say anything pitched with it, but it bothered me. It was on the landing leg. And but how it plays out in Game 6, we're up 3-2. Chad O.J. against Kevin Brown, who was our ace, hands down. Chad O.J. beats Kevin Brown. I'm next in line. And I remember Jim saying, and Jim is so sarcastic, but I love him. He's like, they asked him who he's going to pitch. Oh, who else can I pitch? I got to pitch Leiter. And he tells me this later, and I'm like, oh, thanks. I had your endorsement. And it came down to that little box of, okay, what didn't I do well in Game 4? I looked at Andy Pettit's tape, and I looked at David Wells' tape. David Wells had the big curveball. Andy Pettit was similar to me. Fastball, slider, power slider, cutter. And the power slider cutter didn't work. They had a heck of a team that year. Manny Ramirez and Justice and Matt Williams. I mean, it was a thump team. They had a nice little window there that John Hart put together for a few years, especially offensively. So I realized I was going to I had to throw curveballs. So I get to Charlie Johnson, Larry Rothschild, and we sit in our pitchers meeting, and I said, I got to throw curveballs. And they kind of look at each other. Okay, we've heard that. And I said, no. I'm going to throw curveball first pitch of the game. Because I want, everybody in the first inning, they're going to be watching, what's he got, what's he going to do? And it's Omar Vizquel. I'm warming up down the line at Pro Player Stadium in Miami. And I'm bouncing him, spinning him, just bad. And Charlie's like, all right, you still want to do this? I said, yeah, I got to do it. Eddie Montague, who just retired, home plate umpire, gets behind there, play ball, curve ball, boom, strike. I said, okay, this is going to be great. I mean, it was one of those, like, click it on. The place was packed. So I established the curveball early, and it was a good game.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a no decision. We
But
won
you had to
11
win.
inning.
The team won.
That's
You didn't
right.
get the decision. You
Renteria.
kept the team in the game. A 3-2 win.
It was beautiful. 3-2 win. That's right.
Yeah, great World Series. Al, let me ask you something. Preparing for a game, what is a game day like for somebody like Al Leiter, who's an intense, focused individual? How do you prepare for that game? It's a night game. You get up in the morning. What's the path?
Okay. It changed. It changed over the years for a couple of things. One, I matured. Yes, I was intense, maybe hyper at times. You just mellowed in different ways. So, but when I felt comfortable in my routine and I was an established big league pitcher, I realized that in order to be consistent as a player on the field and in between the lines, you have to have consistency outside the line. That means that what you thought worked, stay with it. Because if you're inconsistent with your preparation, good game, bad game, I'm going to change it, you're all over the place. You're showing inconsistent behavior in your mind because, hey, I'm going to do X amount of running the day after my start. I'm going to run an hour. I'll do stadiums the next day. I'll long toss for 15 minutes. I'll throw my side 10 to 12 minutes, work on the pitches that didn't work. I'll do my cuff exercises, shoulder exercises, upper weight. The next day I'll do lower half. I won't run distance. I'll run sprint. The day before generally is light work, massage, but it was down. It really is down to a science. And most big league guys, even guys that are kind of out there in the sense of, whatever, I'll just go throw it. They have a routine. And my routine was very regimented and consistent. And I stayed with it. The times in which my routine would change would be based on when I would warm up, whether I was at home or on the road. And I think much of it, and I say this on the air, if you got a guy in early first inning, because I was that guy, and they struggle, I would change the time in which I started to throw. 7:05 game, I would come out about 6:20. I would stretch and do everything in the training room, in the weight room, let's just say Shea Stadium, come out, do a couple little wind sprints, maybe a little some jog, get some blood flowing, and then I would start my catch about 20 minutes to 7. Long toss for about 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, it was down to the minute or so, especially if you got superstitious based on your previous start.
Which a lot of us are, a lot of athletes are.
I played with Dwayne Ward, who was a heck of a closer with the Blue Jays. He had this undershirt that he would darn. I mean, holes everywhere, but it was his shirt, and he wore it for about 5 years.
He wasn't comfortable without it.
Yeah, he was keeping it. And I said, "What are you doing?" He'd be darning. "Oh, no, that's my shirt." You superstitious? No. Yeah, right. But I would change the time because I think often, especially with national anthems and ceremonies, you'll see a guy warm up in the pen, come down to the dugout, towel down, and run out. And you just end up throwing 40 to 60 heaves down there. Boom, 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 boom. Heart rate goes up. You're sweating. You come in and you run out. First couple pitches. Games are won and lost in the first inning.
Well, you and I have also talked about pitchers not having their A game and how infrequently they don't have their A game, but they have to find a way to work through it. How do you work through that situation?
Confidence, mental toughness, realizing, this is what I also realized with warm-ups. Warm-ups, and this is where it's changed when I was a younger player. Try to even impart that on a high school kid or even, not so much little league or middle school, but high school when they have a routine to where they warm up to get into the game. A warm-up is just that. It's for you to get the blood flow, the capillaries open, all of the parts of the body that needs to be sweating and properly lubricated to get out there and efficiently, effectively throw a baseball. So, early in my career, I was one of those guys where if I didn't see that life and that hop on the ball, oh no, God, this isn't going to be a good one. And I got away with that. I said, you know what, I'm going to throw, and I feel it's okay. And then if it's not there, that's okay. This is the problem, and I'll say this about a guy because I did some of the games. You have guys that have been superior armed players, pitchers, their entire life. I was one of them that blew away kids in Little League, Babe Ruth, right on up. Get to pro ball, it's really not a whole lot of resistance. You get to the big leagues. And I'm going to mention A.J. Burnett. A.J. Burnett is a great guy. He got to where he did based on a 95 to 100 mile an hour fastball, a curveball that drops off the table and at times is as good as Sandy Koufax. Really doesn't have command. When he does, he's going to have a good game, but he's a two-pitch pitcher. And you mentioned about the ABC. When I got to a point where, even though I was fastball, cutter, take a little off the cutter, became a slider, big curveball, very occasional changeup, I believed that I had an arsenal of 4 pitches. Even though most hitters got in there and they said, okay, he's going to throw a cutter. I still had that belief that I can throw back to a curveball, I'm going to occasionally throw a little two-seamer away and very occasionally change up. And maybe it's a critical time in the game. To a Chipper Jones with 2 outs. Or, you know, when Gary Sheffield was there when we were with when I was with the Mets, or, you know, maybe a moment in a game where, you know, Derek Jeter, you know, whatever that, and you get that key out. So if you are a guy that only has 2 pitches and your 1 pitch is off and your second pitch command-wise is off, where do you go?
They're sitting on it.
You're sitting on it, and you have nothing else to resort to or fall back on. And it's very, very... I call it naked. You're out there naked because you don't really have anything else to go to, and you kind of look around and say, "Well, what do I throw?" And I know that happens to AJ and others because I was that guy. And then you just hope, you know, okay, well, hopefully he hits it at somebody.
So all of a sudden,
bad way to pitch.
All of a sudden now you have your 4 pitches, like you said. AJ has his 2. All right, now you're facing your cutter is working, and now you're facing a tough left-hander like Mark Grace. Is he more challenging to you hitting a cutter, being a lefty, than a righty hitter would be?
Why did you mention Mark Grace?
Because I just noticed that he seemed to hit you a little bit over the years.
No, but you know what? I'm going to say this because now this is where it got to. There's a thing called Inside Edge. It's a scouting report data, and they chart every pitch in the game. And they'll you know there's a place in which this company charts all the pitches, and then comprises data as to what Mark Grace hits on a 1-2 pitch, the slider, the curveball, the changeup, the zone. And I remember using it, and I used Mark Grace because cutter to Mark Grace was a bad pitch. Cutter to Mark Grace most left-handers. Your better left-handers are guys that are going to allow the ball to track, generally not a power guy, and likes to spray the ball. They're going to go left center, right center field. So as a cutter, because mine was the same plane, I used to jam guys. He's a guy that will stay on the ball, and he's perfectly fine with hitting that ball left center field. The numbers showed, and there was a huge disparity, and I used part of the data of Inside Edge stuff, if the numbers were large enough disparity. On 0-2-1-2, Mark Grace was batting 283 on sliders or something. 138, and I remember these numbers, on this guy too, that you mentioned. On curveballs, because now there's a depth of, I'm going to throw 92 miles an hour pretty much, that's say my velocity, and now here comes the 88, 89 cutter that he stays on the ball and goes the other way or goes up the middle. Now I have this 76 mile an hour curveball that's going to have depth and it's going to go down, and even Mark Grace, as good as he is, he's going to roll over it and hit a ground ball.
Change his plane.
Change his planes, change his speeds. And I did it, and I can tell you, I remember the game in Wrigley, because he was a heck of a hitter, as you know. I threw the big curveball. I was in the count. I remember going over it. I think my Dave Wallace was the pitching coach, or whoever it was at the time, maybe Bob Apodaca. I said, there it is. We're in there. Piazza's behind the plate. Cutter, no. Curveball, yes. He gets out in front. Ground ball at second base. So, you know, that component of using that. My strength wasn't against your spray left-handed slap hitter, even your spray right-handed hitter. The way I pitched, because I came at you. I was coming at you, and I never gave up. I was
power hitters.
Power hitters, right-handed power hitters, I ate them up.
How about a Tony Gwynn? A spray hitter could do it all. I mean,
Tony Gwynn.
I think a lot of pitchers say Tony Gwynn with that Gwynn expression.
This was how we defended against him. I remember going to Jack Murphy Stadium, first time facing him. It might have been with the Marlins, maybe it was with the Mets. The defense is this. You have the scatter report, and they look, okay, I don't even know who was in front of them. Didn't matter. Make sure that 1 and 2 is off the base, because Tony Gwynn, you look at his chart, he's pretty much going to hit everything hard. So he didn't have a whole lot of power, but you know, you look at the if this was a strike zone, there's like reds and there's green, you know, there's hot zones, and you know his was hot everywhere.
He used the whole
So
field.
the key to Tony was he wasn't going to hit a home run, although he could. It's like Ichiro. Ichiro, you know, he'll backleg you, but for the most part, he just wants to spray some balls the other way. Keep everybody off the base. He wasn't fast, so even if he got the first 2 guys out and he gets a double, say left center, right center. A single to the outfield not necessarily will score him. Maybe on 2 outs he'll get a good secondary lead. And that's how you defended against him. And any time I used to get him out, it was almost like, I just got Tony Gwynn out.
Well, you certainly want him up with 2 outs and nobody on,
right.
That's for sure. How about, again, let's talk about a few hitters in these last few minutes of the first segment here, Al. Bobby Bonds.
Okay.
Barry Bonds, I'm sorry. You didn't face Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds.
Not that old, am I?
No.
Barry, I saw a big difference with Barry as he got stronger. I'll just leave it at that. There was a little box up and in that he ended up getting to, and the up and in window for most left-handers has always been the spot to exploit the weakness. He got to it. So calm and quiet. He choked up, and there was just this little. He would have this little tap, and they enabled him to stay back, and he ended up hitting everything. And it wasn't like a Tony Gwynn where that ball away. He ended up that ball away wasn't a double. It's a home run. 20 rows back. So the power that he had and the strength, it really made up a lot for a guy that was able to stay back, trust his hands, and have the strength that he had.
Always admired his teammate Andy Van Slyke when they were with Pittsburgh. What was Andy like to face?
I only remember facing Andy in spring training because I was in the American League at the time when he was with the Pirates and also the Cardinals. But you know what? Again, a spray guy. I didn't like facing the guys that could run. That's why I love Brett Gardner. I love this guy. I say it often on the air. Bunt! I don't even care if you bunt and it gets out. And I don't care, because you know what it's going to do? And you see it often with managers. If he shows a couple times, as Andy Van Slyke would, or I'm going to think of another guy that Butler. Remember Brett Butler?
Sure.
You brings the corners in. You're going to increase your base hits, because how many times Yankee fans have seen Brett Gardner hit a ground ball in between the 5.5 hole? There's a quick little play by the shortstop, and he's safe. Sometimes it's a 3-hopper to the shortstop and he's safe. You pull the infields in by showing you can bunt. I didn't like facing those guys because I knew the danger of that. Infield is in until Stu strikes. Now that little slap, that Ichiro slap, is by him because he's now cut down the angle. And Slyke were those type of hitters were nuisances.
Mark McGwire.
Big back. I liked facing him, even though he got to be a better hitter when he's with St. Louis than with Oakland, because he really was the Bash Brothers. He had a couple years, I think he was right at 300. He had a little sit, big swing. He was a low ball hitter, and I just matched up. I would ride that cutter in. I'd occasionally show him some fastballs way off the plate, because I didn't want that danger zone, the mistake outer third, where he could go right center easily. But that in on the hands, get on top of the cutter, ride it on the same plane, just like Vladimir Guerrero. Vladimir Guerrero was another guy that he couldn't hit that up and in window. That's another thing. We talk about pitching, and I know you appreciate this because you know the game well. You're taught to keep the ball down. Absolutely. Strike one, down in the zone, preferably down and away. If you can do that lower quadrant, strike one. If you get movement, better. That's a non-dangerous spot as far as the ball being hit out of the ballpark. But part of also the game is being lost at time is the elevation of a ball. And I'm not talking about belt high. I'm talking about occasionally let a hitter see that ball right in the eye, especially if you've got a little life to it and his four seam's got some carry. Throw it there. Because if nothing else, now they're down, breaking ball down, sinker down, change up down, curveball down, and now it's this one. And it looks good. And there's not too many guys other than Gary Sheffield and a Bonds maybe, Pujols, that can get on top of that fastball. I love elevating. Yes, in and out's important, but it's okay to come upstairs.
Coming up the ladder a bit.
Coming up the ladder. Not that waist 2 feet outside up the ladder, but even if it's right down the middle, ride it, stay in that bowling alley lane. Because now what happens is a hitter, he has to track that. That ball that looks like a strike over the plate, now I have to decide, is it too high, is it too low? Wait, yeah, it's a strike. And even if that, how many times you see a guy, he checks, takes it, and he's out front. Did he go? No. Ball. That's okay, because I got him out front. He had to watch that ball a little longer.
Well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, Leiter. This went so quick. Why don't we come back for part 2, and let's go over some pitching. Let's talk about some pitches and the action that pitch has and maybe the grip and when you would throw it and your philosophy as far as attacking the plate. And we look forward to coming back to Al Leiter, part 2.